Sorry I'm late. On the other site, you can see what I was just posting. I had to get up um from here and do that. Um, I sorry, I didn't um didn't realize I'd have the shakes until I start talking. Although at the time I just a uh just a little while ago. I did talk to her and I wasn't just shaking. Sorry, you know what it is? I think I this person that was like never like responds to me. Like you guys know that the message that I had today, I posted. Well, after that, I actually responded saying, I can't do that until you come. Okay, she said thank you. Damn. Um, I can't do that until you come. Because I need a shower. And he never responded. The person I wrote never responded to that. Like, so I ended up writing my sister the same thing, and she's like, "I'm proud of you." That took a lot of courage. He never responded the entire, and he never does respond. Like it's somebody on here. Like, um, but I thought I would include them in because they said they would help me before with like my health insurance, which they never did. But so I thought maybe they would care. But then they were just so angry last night and cursed at me. Like, it was so weird. Anyway, I didn't want to be on because until later, not until later. I wanted to be on earlier. So I could read because I was able to take a shower. And when people come in late and leave early, I thought, okay, it's got to be because I didn't shower. So then tonight I got the shower, but I was going to be late, and I thought, well, I need to get on as early as possible because they have to go to bed early, I guess. And if I don't stop early, they'll be upset at me even more. So then I felt really, 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 really stressed because I had to get up to go on my computer to send her the money. To come and it took me a while because I had to hook my computer back up and reload load it up on the other room. Sorry. So it's sorry, it's it's not any better than this one. It just has my bank, the website, so it's um so um anyway, so I ran back as fast as possible, and then they had wrote me like, well, I'm going to bed. Um and I feel like I guess they didn't want to see me, or I wasn't fast enough, maybe. I don't know. But the thing is, I realized like they never respond to me really. So why would they be angry at me that I didn't respond? Unless I should have been taking it bad the whole time that they never respond. Sorry, it's that got me shaking. I guess now that I've said it, maybe I'm calming a little bit. Um, so she's been paid, and so that means I can I can read to you a little bit longer then. If you want to stay, I guess. Okay. Then I really should put my shoes on because the person will give me a tip, and I just spent a few $100, even more than the that I have. So if I could get the what'll it be, 20, like $20, then that would be very helpful. So I need to put these on. Where's my other shoe? No, no, it's gotta be here somewhere. Mm. Who's calling me? What is that? Is that you? Arthur? Arthur, I need to. I don't know. Ah, please stop. I need to. Um, Daryl, he's having a he's having a hell of a time in this weather. He had his the ice from the on his windshield wiper. He's been asleep for hours actually. Mm. Oh, uh, oh, is this my other shoe? A bit of luck. Okay. Anyway, um, okay. Oh, my bows. Yeah, I know. I just threw this, this. I just threw this on because I wasn't even expecting that I was going to be able to go live call because I couldn't get my shower to work until somebody wrote me how to do it. Um, oh, Nashville without power? I was thinking, geez. Okay, hold on. Let me put my hair in that. Okay. Well, in the meantime, this chart, I think I said I was going to explain Thursday. What irritated me, huh? Give me a second. Uh-oh. Um, because it's about rating your your happiness on some kind of a scale. Like I think in this example, it literally says birthday cake and um and and feel go back. Where's my coffee? And you know how I feel about rating things? Um, and I'm sure there's always exceptions. Um, especially like with rating people. But I feel like, and if his his aim is about happiness, right? Well, mm, my shoes. Well, if you're rating something, that means something is better. Oh, isn't that great for this one? But something is worse. Oh, isn't that awful for this one, right? Certainly, like, isn't that horrible for people? Oh, this person is better. So that means you are worse. But if you don't do that, then this doesn't have to happen. You can just have two things that are good. So the thing is, if you're rating this level of happiness from this and this level from that, you don't really have to. And then what is your argument? It could be like, but Stella, if you're not rating things based on what's better, then all you're left with is just happiness? Yeah. Just enjoying your life and experiences? Yeah. I think you're lessening it by having to be like, "Oh, this one is worse." Like, Um, sorry. Like this mutt. Clearly the worst mutt. The worst mutt. You're lucky I don't rate. You're lucky. You're lucky I don't rate who's better between her. Rex. No, you got the reindeer. I guess that makes you better. Oh, thank you, Jerry. Oh, we do not need the squeaks right now, Fiola. Sorry, I would have done this before, but you know why. And also, if I had to get up in these, probably could have been a danger. Probably could have been a danger to get up with. Hey. Guys, you don't know. Hey, let's talk about happiness. You don't know how happy I am to get a shower. And you know what? People will begrudge me that, I'm sure. See, I'm generally very, 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 very sad. So if any minor thing was just I haven't got a shower in days, cleaning freaking you guys saw that bathroom, cleaning in that bathroom, you guys saw on the other side. Um, but if I'm just for a little half a smile, like, well, gee, I'm glad that I'm not covered in actual filth anymore. It's like, look at this bitch. Look at this smug, happy little bitch. Like, see me. Like, let's tear her down a few pegs. Please. I don't know how many more pegs I can go down. How many are there? Okay. Okay. All right, I got my book. I'll pull you guys up on the phone. You're seeing it's easy. No, we're not gonna play right now. You're gonna go up on the bed. Okay. Okay. No, no, no. I'll take that reindeer away. Mm, okay. Okay. Oh my god, this is the first time I have laid down. I even sat down really except for on the floor when I was cleaning the floor. Since I've gotten up today. This is so nice. Okay, let me pull you guys up. Um, oh, okay. Okay. Wait, what is that? Oh, never mind. It was like missed call. Was that her? No, that was you, Arthur. Okay. Whew. Mm, okay. Okay. Hyaluronic acid instantly hydrates and reduces experience stretching. Well, it begins here. Stretching experience. A cleaning lady. I don't know what it is. My house in the after will still look like before pictures. So I don't know. You got any of that auto insurance? Something. Any health insurance? Patriots are going back to the Super Bowl. Okay. You know what? As long as you're happy. 0 stars to this weather. Oh, jeez. Ugh. Mm. Lori and Reba have not done many of the things that, for the rest of us, give rise to feelings near the top of the happiness scale. Why are you to speak for the rest of us? Ugh. Cartwheels, scuba diving, name your poison. Wait, hold on. Neither of those would be my poison. Ugh. And surely this must make a difference. If impoverished experiential backgrounds don't make a difference, or no, don't necessarily squish language, then what do they do instead? Let's assume that Lori and Reba, just to refresh, they're the conjoined twins. They seem to be conjoined. I was gonna say in the head, but then he said before, like, they're choosing not to get a surgery to remove, so I don't think that'd be the head. Okay. Um let's assume that Lori and Reba really do have an impoverished experiential background against which to evaluate something as simple as, say, the dutiful presentation of a chocolate cake on their birthday. One possibility is that their impoverished experiential background would squish their language, but another possibility is that their impoverished experiential background would not squish their language so much as it would stretch their experience. That is, when they say a, they mean exactly the same thing we mean when we say a, because when they receive a birthday cake, they feel exactly the same way that the rest of us feel when we do underwater cartwheels along the Great Barrier Reef. Why do you keep saying the rest of us? Why? Figure 7 illustrates the experience stretching hypothesis. Well, let's ask a gay man. I'm sure they all feel. I'm sorry. I don't see any way that I can finish that without being immediately in trouble with the YouTube. I'm just going to say that I don't feel that everyone has the same enjoyment of the male anatomy as they do. Okay. um, Experience stretching is a bizarre phrase, but not a bizarre idea. We often say of others who claim to be happy despite circumstances that we believe should preclude it that they only think they're happy because they don't know what they're missing. Okay, sure, but that's the point. Not knowing what we're missing can mean that we are truly happy under circumstances that would not allow us to be happy once we have experienced the missing thing. It does not mean that those who don't know what they're missing are less happy than those who have it. Examples abound in my life and yours. Really, mine? Want to bet? So let's talk about mine. I occasionally smoke a cigar because it makes me happy. Oh, really? No, it's the nicotine. You're ingesting a drug and you're having a physical reaction to a drug. Why do you think so many people in history enjoy the same drug that you're taking, which is a drug? It also probably makes you. It does have nicotine has an effect on the brain. Not to promote it, but positive. It has positive connotations with yeah, your brain working better for the time. And as a professor who wants to probably get ahead of his colleagues, that's probably why. But go ahead. It just makes me happy. That's all. That's all. Oh, thank you, Rob. Snowman. More than the nicotine. It's the whole. No, it's not. That's not more than the nicotine. Why didn't they pick something else? Why don't they just blow bubbles? Bubbles are very nice and they help me breathe slower. Oh, I know, because it's the drug. Okay. And my wife occasionally fails to understand why I must have a cigar to be happy when she can apparently be just as happy without one. I don't know, maybe it's not a drug of her choice as it is the drug of yours. And even happier without me having one. Oh, shut up. But the experience stretching hypothesis suggests that I too could have been happy without cigars if only I had not experienced their pharmacological mysteries in my wayward youth. But I did. And because I did, I now know what I am missing when I don't. Hence that glorious moment during my spring vacation when I am reclining in a lawn chair on the golden sands of Kauai. I'm going to say Kauai, sipping Talisker and watching the sun slip slowly into a taffeta sea. It's just not quite perfect if I don't also have something stinky and Cuban in my mouth. Oh, yes. And how can we not have something that's perfect? I mean, we must analyze whether or not this experience is perfect or not. We can't just enjoy something. No, it has to be perfect. And the only way we can get there is by analyzing that everything else is less than. I could press both my luck and my marriage by advancing the language switching hypothesis, carefully explaining to my wife that because she has never experienced the pungent earthiness of a Monte Cristo #4, she has an impoverished experiential background and therefore does not know what happiness really is. I would lose, of course, because I always do, but in this case, I would deserve it. Divorce that cow. Which one? Doesn't it make better sense to say that by learning to enjoy cigars, I changed my experiential background and inadvertently ruined all future experiences that do not include them? No, it's literally only if you do the stupid, stupid thing that you're doing, which is rate things and analyze them based against each other. It does you no good at all. But you're too stupid to get that. It's fine by me. I have no problem pointing that out. The Hawaiian sunset was an 8 until the Hawaiian sunset a la Stogie took its place and reduced the cigarless sunset to a mere 7. Oh my God. Why am I not a fucking professor? I'm a professor so much better than you. I can think of a lot of reasons, but we've talked enough about me and my vacation. Let's talk about me and my guitar. I played the guitar for years, and I get very little pleasure from executing an endless repetition of 3-chord blues. But when I first learned to play as a teenager, I would sit upstairs in my bedroom, happily strumming those 3 chords until my parents banged on the ceiling and invoked their rights under the Geneva Convention. I don't know. Am I supposed to insert laughter here? I suppose we could try the language swishing hypothesis here and say that my eyes have been opened by my improved musical abilities, and that I now realize I was not really happy in those teenage days. But that doesn't it seem more reasonable to invoke the experience stretching hypothesis and say that an experience that once brought me pleasure no longer does? Um, you're a spoiled shit. You have both parents, am I right, when you were growing up? I imagine your life was so privileged that um pretending you were like a rock musician or something, pretending you had an actual difficult life, something worth writing a song about, maybe that's what made you happy. And now, as time's gone on, you realize just how privileged that you are, and you can't you can't even benefit from the illusion any longer in the moment. A man who is given a drink of water after being lost in the Mojave Desert for a week may at that moment rate his happiness as 8. A year later, the same drink might induce him to feel no better than a 2. Are we to believe that he was wrong about how happy he was when he took that life giving sip from a rusty canteen? Or is it more reasonable to say that a sip of water can be a source of ecstasy or a source of moisture, depending on one's experiential background? If impoverished experiential backgrounds squish our language rather than stretch our experience, then children who say they are delighted by peanut butter and jelly are just plain wrong. And they will admit it later in life when they get their first bite of goose liver, at which time they will be right. Until they get older and begin to get heartburn from fatty foods, at which time they will realize that they were wrong then too. Every day would be a repudiation of the day before, as we experienced greater and greater happiness and realized how thoroughly deluded we were until conveniently enough now. What the fuck did you just ramble? Um, First of all, peanut butter and jelly is delicious. Um, this sounds like the ramblings of somebody who sits in Hawaii smoking a cigar and has nothing but time to rate whether it's an 8 or a 7. The guy that you're giving the water canteen to in the Mojave, I'm sorry, it wouldn't be you, it'd be somebody else giving him the water. You would be on the side saying, now, would you rate this an 8 on the scale of happiness? In which case, you take the canteen and beat you upside the head with it. So, which hypothesis is correct? We can't say. I think we can say. What we can say is that all claims of happiness are claims from someone's point of view, from the perspective of a single human being whose unique collection of past experiences serves as a context, a lens, a background for her evaluation of her current experience. You had peanut butter, well, I had peanut butter and jelly, I think last week. I don't have bread anymore, but yeah, when I had bread. Mm. As much as the scientist might wish for it, there isn't a view from nowhere. Once we have an experience, we are thereafter unable to see the world as we did before. Really? Even if you have dementia? We are there. Okay. Our innocence is lost and we cannot go home again. We may remember what we thought or said, though not necessarily, and we may remember what we did, though not necessarily that either. But the likelihood is depressingly slim that we cannot resurrect our experience and then evaluate it as we would have back then. Why are you evaluating it? In some ways, the cigar smoking, guitar playing, pate eating people we become have no more authority to speak on behalf of the people we used to be than do outside observers. The separated twins may be able to tell us how they now feel about having been conjoined, but they cannot tell us how conjoined twins who have never experienced separation feel about it. Well, actually, they could, right? Because there was a time that they didn't. No one knows if Reba and Lori's 8 feels like our 8. And yeah, and no one cares either. And that includes all the Rebas and Loris that will ever be. I never waste my time thinking, oh, okay, this one is almost gone. I have an iced coffee right here. Here's a coffee. I think this is cinnamon. I never sit here thinking, oh my God, what if someone else is enjoying cinnamon coffee more than me? What would I rate this? What would I rate this? And if I waste enough time rating it, what if someone would rate it higher on the pleasure? What a waste of time. Why? Why? Give me a good reason why that's not a waste of time. Give me one. I'm open to hearing it. Let's write this down. Well, we'll wait till we're done. It used to be a vodka, bourbon, Bud Light mixed with a Malibu. Drunk in love. Okay, onward. On the morning of May 15, 1916, the Arctic explorer Ernest Shackleton began the last leg of one of history's most grueling adventures. His ship, the Endurance, had sunk in the Weddell Sea, stranding him and his crew on Elephant Island. After 7 months, Shackleton and 5 of his crewmen boarded a small lifeboat in which they spent 3 weeks crossing 800 miles of frigid, raging ocean. Upon reaching South Georgia Island, the starving, frostbitten men prepared to disembark and cross the island on foot in the hope of reaching a whaling station on the other side. No one had ever survived that trek. Facing almost certain death that morning, Shackleton wrote, "We passed through the narrow mouth of the cove with the ugly rocks and waving kelp close on either side, turned to the east and sailed merrily up the bay as the sun broke through the mist and made the tossing water sparkle around us. We were a curious looking party on that bright morning, but we were feeling happy. We even broke into song, and, but for our Robinson Crusoe appearance, a casual observer might have taken us for a picnic party, sailing in a Norwegian fjord or one of the beautiful sounds of the west coast of New Zealand." Could Shackleton really have meant what he said? Could his happy be our happy? And is there any way to tell? As we've seen, happiness is a subjective experience that is difficult to describe to ourselves and to others. Thus, evaluating people's claims about their own happiness is an exceptionally thorny business. But don't worry, because before business gets better, it gets a whole lot thornier. Chapter 3, Outside Looking In. I make cinnamon coffee at work. It's good. Go to your bosom, knock there, and ask your heart what it doth know. Shakespeare, Measure for Measure. There aren't many jokes about psychology professors, so we tend to cherish the few we have. Here's one. What do psychology professors say when they pass each other in the hallway? "Hi, you're fine, how am I?" I know, the joke isn't that funny. But the reason it's supposed to be funny is that people shouldn't know how others are feeling, but they should know how they're feeling themselves. "How are you?" is overly familiar for the same reason that "how am I?" is overly strange. And yet, strange as it is, there are times when people seem not to know their own hearts. When conjoined twins claim to be happy, we have to wonder if perhaps they just think they're happy. No, we don't have to wonder that. That is, they may believe what they're saying, but what they're saying may be wrong. Before we can decide whether to accept people's claims about their happiness, we must first decide whether people can, in principle, be mistaken about what they feel. We can be wrong about all sorts of things: the price of soybeans, the lifespan of dust mites, the history of flannel. But can we be wrong about our own emotional experience? Can we believe we are feeling something we aren't? Are there really folks out there who can't accurately answer the world's most familiar question? Yes, and you'll find one in the mirror. Read on. Dazed and confused. But not just yet. Before you read on, I challenge you to stop and have a nice long look at your thumb. uh, like you've been looking at your navel your whole fucking life. Now, I will wager that you did not accept my challenge. You're wagering with yourself, though. I will wager that you went right on reading because looking at your thumb is so easy that it makes for a rather pointless sport. Everyone bats 1,000, and the game is called on account of boredom. But if looking at your thumb seems beneath you, just consider what actually has to happen for us to see an object in our environment. A thumb, a glazed donut, or a rabid wolverine. In the tiny gap between the time that the light reflected from the surface of the object reaches our eyes and the time that we become aware of the object's identity, our brains must extract and analyze the object's features and compare them with information in our memory to determine what the thing is and what we ought to do about it. This is complicated stuff. So complicated that no scientist yet understands precisely how it happens, and no computer can simulate the trick. But it is just the sort of complicated stuff that brains do with exceptional speed and accuracy. In fact, they perform these analyses with such proficiency that we have the experience of simply looking leftward, seeing a wolverine, feeling afraid, and preparing to do all further analysis from the safety of a sycamore. Think for a moment about how looking ought to happen. If you were designing a brain from scratch, you would probably design it so that it first identified objects in its environment. Sharp teeth, brown fur, weird little snorting sound, hot drool. Why? That's a rabid wolverine. And then figured out what to do. Leaving seems like a splendid idea, but now? But human brains were not designed from scratch. Rather, their most critical functions were designed first. And their less critical functions were added on like bells and whistles as the millennia passed, which is why the really important parts of your brain are down at the bottom, and the parts you could probably live without sit atop them, like ice cream on a cone. As it turns out, running with great haste from rabid wolverines is much more important than knowing what they are. Indeed, actions such as running away are so vitally important to the survival of terrestrial mammals like the ones from which we are descended that evolution took no chances and designed the brain to answer the what should I do question before the what is it question. Experiments have demonstrated that the moment we encounter an object, our brains instantly analyze just a few of its key features and then use the presence or absence of these features to make one very fast and very simple decision. Is this object an important thing to which I ought to respond right now? Rabid wolverines, crying babies, hurled rocks, beckoning mates, cowering prey. These things count for a lot in the game of survival, which requires that we take immediate action when we happen upon them and do not dally to contemplate the finer points of their identities. As such, our brains are designed to decide first whether objects count and to decide later what those objects are. This means that when you turn your head to the left, there is a fraction of a second during which your brain does not know that it is seeing a wolverine, but does know that it is seeing something scary. But how can that be? How can we know something is scary if we don't know what it is? To understand how this can happen, just consider how you would go about identifying a person whose walking toward you across a vast expanse of desert. The first thing to catch your eye would be a small flicker of motion on the horizon. As you stared, you would soon notice that the motion was that of an object moving toward you. As it came closer, you would see that the motion was biological. Then you would see that the biological object was a biped, then a human, then a female, then a fat human female with dark hair and a Budweiser t-shirt. And then, hey, what's Aunt Mabel doing in the Sahara? Your identification of Aunt Mabel would progress, that is, it would begin quite generally and become more specific over time, until finally it terminated in a family reunion. Similarly, the identification of a wolverine at your elbow progresses over time, albeit a few milliseconds, and it too progresses from the general to the specific. Research demonstrates that there is enough information in the very early, very general stages of this identification process to decide whether an object is scary, but not enough information to know what the object is. Once our brains decide that they are in the presence of something scary, they instruct our glands to produce hormones that create a state of heightened physiological arousal. Blood pressure rises, heart rate increases, pupils contract, muscles tense, which prepares us to spring into action before our brains have finished the full-scale analysis that will allow us to know that the object is a wolverine. They have already put our bodies into their ready to run away modes, all pumped up and raring to go. The fact that we can feel aroused without knowing exactly what it is that has aroused us has important implications for our ability to identify our own emotions. For example, researchers studied the reactions of some young men who were crossing a long, narrow suspension bridge constructed of wooden boards and wire cables that rocked and swayed 230 feet above the Capilano River in North Vancouver. A young woman approached each man and asked if he would mind completing a survey. And after he did so, the woman gave the man her telephone number and offered to explain her survey project in greater detail if he called. And after he did so, the woman gave the man her telephone number. Wait, Homer, I say, oh, now here's the catch. The woman approached some of these young men as they were crossing the bridge, and others only after they had crossed it. As it turned out, the men who had met the woman as they were crossing the bridge were much more likely to call her in the coming days. Why? The men who met the woman in the middle of a shaky, swaying suspension bridge were experiencing intense physiological arousal, which they would normally have identified as fear. But because they were being interviewed by an attractive woman, they mistakenly identified their arousal as sexual attraction. Apparently, feelings that one interprets as fear in the presence of a sheer drop may be interpreted as lust in the presence of a sheer blouse, which is simply to say that people can be wrong about what they are feeling. Give me a fucking. This is another example of a non-replicatable study, quote, study. This is the number was for a study, right? What does it have to do with how the woman looks about the study? Couldn't the men have wives? Like, whatever. Comfortably numb. The novelist Graham Greene wrote, hatred seems to operate the same glands as love. Indeed, research shows that physiological arousal can be interpreted in a variety of ways, and our interpretation of our arousal depends on what we believe caused it. It is possible to mistake fear for lust, apprehension for guilt, shame for anxiety, but just because we don't always know what to call our emotional experience doesn't mean that we don't know what the experience is like, does it? Perhaps we can't say its name and perhaps we don't know what made it happen, but we always know what it feels like, right? Is it possible to believe we are feeling something when we are actually feeling nothing at all? The philosopher Daniel Dennett put the question this way. Suppose someone is given the post-hypnotic suggestion that upon awakening, he will have a pain in his wrist. If the hypnosis works, is it a case of pain, hypnotically induced, or merely a case of a person who has been induced to believe he has a pain? If one answers that the hypnosis has induced real pain, suppose the post-hypnotic suggestion has been, on awakening, you will believe you have a pain in the wrist. If this suggestion works, is the circumstance just like the previous one? Isn't believing you are in pain tantamount to being in pain? I don't know. This highly depends on if you can prove that the hypnosis worked. A pain is it lights certain areas in the brain. So you can actually genuinely study this if you are feeling pain through hypnosis or whatever. At first blush, the idea that we can mistakenly believe we are feeling pain seems preposterous, if only because the distinction between feeling pain and believing one is feeling pain looks so suspiciously like an artifact of language. But give this idea a second blush while considering the following scenario. You are sitting at a sidewalk cafe, sipping a tangy espresso and contentedly browsing the Sunday newspaper. People are strolling by and taking in the fine morning and the amorous activities of a young couple at a nearby table attest to the eternal wonder of spring. The song of a scarlet tanager punctuates the yeasty scent of new croissants that wafts from the bakery. The article you are reading on campaign finance reform is quite interesting and all is well until suddenly you realize that you're now reading the third paragraph, that somewhere in the middle of the first you started sniffing baked goods and listening to bird chirps, and that you now have absolutely no idea what the story you are reading is about. Did you actually read that second paragraph? Or did you merely dream it? You take a quick look back and sure enough, all the words are familiar. As you read them again, you can even recall hearing them spoken a few moments ago by that narrator in your head who sounds astonishingly like you and whose voice was submerged for a paragraph or two beneath the sweet distractions of the season. Two questions confront us. First, did you experience the paragraph the first time you read it? Second, if so, did you know you were experiencing it? The answers are yes and no, respectively. Oh my God, it's subconscious, right? So it's like, remember when I had you guys, the like sleep meditation. You can find those videos on YouTube, but you gotta find them without the ads. But Did you really hear it? Yeah, subconsciously while you were dreaming, unless, of course, it was so loud or whatever that it woke you up or prevented you from sleeping. Like, if you're getting a hand job while you're sleeping, did you really get a hand job? You weren't conscious. Well, I don't know. Your Mr. Wickles down there would let you know. I mean, yeah, you experienced it back here. Or at least part of that. This genius. Second, if so, did you know you were experiencing it? The answers are yes and no, respectively. You experienced the paragraph, and that's why it was so familiar to you when you went back through it. Had there been an eye tracker at your table, it would have revealed that you did not stop reading at any point. In fact, you were smack dab in the middle of reading's smooth movements when suddenly you caught yourself what? Experiencing without being aware that you were experiencing. I don't know what absent-mindedness, ADHDs, I don't know what you call that. Ugh. Hmm. Now, let me slow down for a moment and tread carefully around these words, lest you start listening for the high-pitched tones of the indigo bunting. The word experience implies participation in an event, whereas awareness implies observation of an event. The two words can normally be substituted in ordinary conversation without much damage, but they are differently inflected. One gives us the sense of being engaged, whereas the other gives us the sense of being cognizant of that engagement. One denotes reflection, while the other denotes the thing being reflected. In fact, awareness can be thought of as a kind of experience of our own experience. When two people argue about whether their dogs are conscious, one is usually using that badly bruised term to mean capable of experience, while the other is using it to mean capable of awareness. Dogs are not rocks, one argues, so of course they are conscious. Dogs are not people, the other replies, so of course they are not conscious. Both arguers are probably right. Dogs probably do have an experience of yellow and sweet. I don't know what the colors they can see. There's something it is like to be a dog standing before a sweet yellow thing, even if human beings can never know what that something is. But the experiencing dog is probably not simultaneously aware that it is having that experience, thinking as it chews, damn fine lady finger. The distinction between experience and awareness is elusive because most of the time they hang together so nicely. We pop a lady finger in our mouths, we experience sweetness. We know we are experiencing sweetness, and nothing about any of this seems even remotely challenging. But if the typically tight bond between experience and awareness leads us that the distinction between them is an exercise in hand waving, you need to wind the tape a bit and imagine yourself back at the cafe at precisely the moment your eyes were running across the newsprint and your mind was about to mosey off to contemplate the sounds and smells around you. Now, hit play and imagine that your mind wanders away, gets lost, and never comes back. That's right. Imagine that as you experience the newspaper article, your awareness becomes permanently unbound from your experience. And you never catch yourself drifting away, never return to the moment with a start to discover what you are reading. The young couple at the nearby table stop pawing each other long enough to lean over and ask you for the latest news on the campaign finance reform bill, and you patiently explain that you could not possibly know that because, as they would surely see if they would pay attention to something other than their glands, that you are happily listening to the sounds of spring and not reading a newspaper. The young couple is perplexed by this response because, as far as they can see it, you do indeed have a newspaper in your hands, and your eyeballs are, in fact, running rapidly across the page as you deny it. After a bit of whispering and one more smooch, they decide to run a test to determine whether you are telling the truth. Mm, mm. Sorry to bother you again, but we are desperate to know how many senators voted for the campaign finance reform bill last week and wonder if you would be good enough to hazard a guess because you are sniffing croissants, listening to bird calls, and not reading a newspaper. You have no idea how many senators voted for the bill, but it appears that the only way to get these strange people to mind their own business is to tell them something. So you pull a number out of thin air. How about 41? You offer, and no one's astonishment but your own, the number is exactly right. This scenario may seem too bizarre to be real. After all, how likely is it that 41 senators would actually vote for campaign finance reform? He heard this watching C and fucking N, and he's obsessed with it. He thinks it sounds really smart. Shut up. But it is both. Our visual experience and our awareness of that experience are generated by different parts of our brains. I'm sure you could, this could go back like 1,000 years ago. You could go CIA running tapes. Play in the supermarket, right? 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. Say like you're shopping for, your canned peas, and they're just constantly playing 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, and then someone asks you, "What's 2 times 2?" And oh, how did I know that? I mean, anyone could tell you this. Our visual experience and our awareness of that experience are generated by different parts of our brains, and as such, certain kinds of brain damage, specifically lesions to the primary visual cortical receiving area known as V1, without impairing the other, causing experience and awareness to lose their normally tight grip on each other. For example, people who suffer from the condition known as blind sight have no awareness of seeing and will truthfully tell you that they are completely blind. Brain scans lend credence to their claims by revealing diminished activity in the areas normally associated with awareness of visual experience. On the other hand, the same scans reveal relatively normal activity in the areas associated with vision. So, if we flash a light on a particular spot on the wall and ask the blindsided person if she saw the light we just flashed, she tells us, no, of course not. As you might infer from the presence of the guide dog, I'm blind. But if we ask her to make a guess about where the light might have appeared, just take a stab at it. Say anything. Point randomly if you like. She guesses correctly far more often than we would expect by chance. She is seeing. if by seeing we mean experiencing the light and acquiring knowledge about its location. But she's blind. If by blind, we mean that she's not aware of having seen. Her eyes are projecting the movie of reality on the little theater screen in her head, but the audience is in the lobby getting popcorn. This disassociation between awareness and experience can cause people to seem some can cause the same sort of spookiness with regard to our emotions. Some people seem to be keenly aware of their moods and feelings and may have even have a novelist's gift for describing their every shade and flavor. Others of us come equipped with a somewhat more basic emotional vocabulary that, much to the chagrin of our romantic partners, consists primarily of good, not so good, and I already told you. If our expressive deficit is so profound and protracted that it even occurs outside of football season, we may be diagnosed with alexithymia, which literally means absence of words to describe emotional states. When alexithymics are asked what they are feeling, they usually say nothing. And when they're asked how they're feeling, they usually say, I don't know. Alas, theirs is not a malady that can be cured by a pocket thesaurus or a short course in word power, because alexithymics do not lack the traditional affective lexicon so much as they lack introspective awareness of their emotional states. They seem to have feelings, they just don't seem to know about them. For instance, when researchers show volunteers emotionally evocative pictures of amputations and car wrecks, the physiological responses of alexithymics are indistinguishable from those of normal people. But when they're asked to make verbal ratings of the unpleasantness of these pictures, alexithymics are decidedly less capable than normal people of distinguishing them from pictures of rainbows and puppies. Some evidence suggests that alexithymia is caused by a dysfunction of the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the part of the brain known to mediate our awareness of many things, including our inner states. Just as the decoupling of awareness and visual experience can give rise to blind sight, so the decoupling of awareness and emotional experience can give rise to what we might call numb feel. Apparently, it is possible, at least for some of the people, some of the time, to be happy, sad, bored, or curious and not knowing. Warm the happyometer. Once upon a time, there was a bearded god who made a small, flat earth and pasted it in the very middle of the sky so that human beings would be at the center of everything. Then physics came along and complicated the picture with big bangs, quarks, brains, and super strings. And the payoff for all that critical analysis is that now, several hundred years later, most people have no idea where they are. Psychology has also created problems where once there were none by exposing the flaws in our intuitive understandings of ourselves. Maybe the universe has several small dimensions tucked inside the large ones. Maybe time will eventually stand still or flow backward. And maybe folks like us were never meant to fathom a bit of it. But one thing we can always count on is our own experience. The philosopher and mathematician Rene
Descartes concluded that our experience is the only thing about which we may be completely sure, and that everything else we think we know is merely an inference from that. And yet, we have seen that when we say with moderate precision that we mean by words such as happiness, we still can't be sure that two people who claim to be happy are having the same experience, or that our current experience of happiness is really different from our past experience of happiness, or that we are having an experience of happiness at all. If the goal of science is to make us feel awkward and ignorant in the presence of things we once understood perfectly well, then psychology has succeeded above all others. But like happiness, science is one of those words that means too many things to too many people and is thus often at risk of meaning nothing at all. My father is an eminent biologist who, after pondering the matter for some decades, recently revealed to me that psychology can't really be a science because science requires the use of electricity. Apparently, shocks to your ankles don't count. My own definition of science is a bit more eclectic. It's not a real science, though. It's not. I mean, it has nothing to do with the electricity, but it's still not. It's well, I would say it's not a hard science, but it's just not. You, if you're being generous, you might say it's an art. Um, but I'm not. I'm not generous about it. But one thing about which my dad, and most other scientists can agree is that if a thing cannot be measured, then it cannot be studied scientifically. It can be studied, and one might even argue that the study of such unquantifiables is more worthwhile than all the sciences laid end to end. But it is not science because science is about measurement. And if a thing cannot be measured, cannot be compared with a clock or a ruler or something other than itself, it's not a potential object of scientific inquiry. As we have seen, it is extremely difficult to measure an individual's happiness and feel completely confident in the validity and reliability of that measurement. People may not know how they feel or remember how they felt, and even if they do, scientists can never know exactly how their experience maps onto their description of that experience, and hence they cannot know precisely how to interpret people's claims. All of this suggests that the scientific study of subjective experience is bound to be tough going. Tough, yes, but not impossible, because the chasm between experiences can be bridged, not with steel girders or a 6-lane toll road, mind you, but with a length of reasonably sturdy rope if we accept 3 premises. Measuring right. The first premise is something that any carpenter could tell you. Imperfect tools are a real pain, but they sure beat pounding nails with your teeth. The nature of subjective experience suggests there will never be a happyometer, a perfectly reliable instrument that allows an observer to measure with complete accuracy the characteristics of another person's subjective experience so that the measurement can be taken, recorded, and compared with another. If we demand that level of perfection from our tools, then we better pack up the eye trackers, brain scanners, and color swatches and cede the study of subjective experience to the poets who did a nice job with it for the first few thousand years. But if we do that, then it is only fair that we hand them the study of almost everything else as well: chronometers, thermometers, barometers, spectrometers, and every other device that scientists use to measure the objects of their interest are imperfect. Ugh, not as imperfect as these bullshit studies that you cite. Well, a woman that I find attractive was on a bridge somewhere. That's not science. Every one of them introduces some degree of error into the observation it allows, which is why governments and universities pay obscene sums of money each year for the slightly more perfect version of each. And if we are purging ourselves of all things that afford us only imperfect approximations of the truth, then we need to discard not only psychology and the physical sciences, but law, economics, and history as well. In short, if we adhere to the standard of perfection in all our endeavors, we are left with nothing but mathematics and the White Album. So maybe we just need to accept a bit of fuzziness and stop complaining. The second premise is that of all the flawed measures of subjective experience that we can take, the honest, real time report of the attentive individual is the least flawed. Mm, mm, mm. There are many other ways to measure happiness, of course, and some of them appear to be much more rigorous, scientific, and objective than a person's own claims. For example, electromyography allows us to measure the electrical signals produced by the striated muscles of the face, such as the corrugator supercilia, which furrows our brows when we experience something unpleasant, or the zygomaticus major, which pulls our mouths up toward our ears when we smile. Physiography allows us to measure the electrodermal, respiratory, and cardiac activity of the autonomic nervous system, all of which change when we experience strong emotions. Electroencephalography, positron emission tomography, and magnetic resonance imaging allow us to measure electrical activity and blood flow in different regions of the brain, such as the left and right prefrontal cortex, which tend to be active when we are experiencing positive and negative emotions, respectively. Even a clock can be a useful device for measuring happiness because startled people tend to blink more slowly when they're feeling happy than when they're feeling fearful or anxious. Scientists who rely on the honest, real time reports of attentive individuals often feel the need to defend that choice by reminding us that these reports correlate strongly with other measures of happiness. But in a sense, they've got it backward. After all, the only reason why we take any of these bodily events, from muscle movement to cerebral blood flow, as indices of happiness is that people tell us they are. If everyone claimed to feel raging anger or thick black depression when their zygomatic muscle contracted, their eye blink slowed, and the left anterior brain region filled with blood, then we would have to revise our interpretations of these physiological changes and take them as indices of unhappiness instead. If we want to know how a person feels, we must begin by acknowledging the fact that there is one and only one observer stationed at the critical point of view. She may not always remember what she felt before, and she may not always be aware of what she's feeling right now. We may be puzzled by her reports, skeptical of her memory, and worried about her ability to use language as we do, but when all our hand wringing is over, we must admit that she is the only person who has even the slightest chance of describing the view from and here, which is why her claims serve as the gold standard against which all other measures are measured. Oh, thank you, Jerry. Notice how he says she, because if you ask men what they're feeling, they'll be like, uh, I don't know. I wasn't thinking about it. We will have greater confidence in her claims when they jibe with what other, less privileged observers tell us. When we feel confident that she evaluates her experience against the same background that we do, when her body does what most other bodies do, when they experience what she is claiming to experience, and so on. But even when all of these various indices of happiness dovetail nicely, we cannot be perfectly sure that we know the truth about her inner world. We can, however, be sure that we have come as close as observers ever get, and that has to be good enough. Measuring often. The third premise is that imperfections in measurement are always a problem, but they are a devastating problem only when we don't recognize them. If we have a deep scratch on our eyeglasses and don't know it, we may erroneously conclude that a small crack has opened the fabric of space and is following us wherever we go. But if we are cognizant of the scratch, we can do our best to factor it out of our observations, reminding ourselves that what looks like a rip in space is really just a flaw in the device we are using to observe it. What can science do to see through the flaws inherent in reports of subjective experiences? The answer lies in a phenomenon that statisticians call the law of large numbers. Many of us have mistaken idea about large numbers, namely that they are like small numbers, only bigger. As such, we expect them to do more of what small numbers do, but not do anything different. So, for instance, we know that two neurons swapping electrochemical signals across their axons and dendrites cannot possibly be conscious. Nerve cells are simple devices, less complex than walkie talkies from Sears, and they do one simple thing, namely react to the chemicals that reach them by releasing chemicals of their own. If we blithely go on to assume that 10 billion of these simple devices can only do 10 billion simple things, we would never guess that billions of them cannot exhibit a property that 2, 10, or 10,000 cannot. Consciousness is precisely this sort of emergent property, a phenomenon that arises in part as a result of the sheer number of interconnections among neurons in the human brain, and that does not exist in any of the parts or in the interconnection of just a few. What does that mean? That bugs can't be conscious? They don't have as many neurons? Then that means that some creatures can be even more conscious, right? Even I guess various different human to human, no? Quantum physics offers a similar lesson. We know that subatomic particles have the strange and charming ability to exist in two places at once. And if we assume that anything composed of these particles must behave likewise, we should expect all cows to be in all possible barns at the same time. Huh? What? So she's like, what? What are you doing? Which they obviously are not, because fixedness is another one of those properties that emerges. from the interaction of a terribly large number of terribly tiny parts that do not themselves have it. In short, more is not just more, it is sometimes other than less. The magic of large numbers works along with the laws of probability to remedy many of the problems associated with the imperfect measurement of subjective experience. You know that if a fair coin is flipped on several occasions, it should come up heads about half the time. As such, if you have nothing better to do on a Tuesday evening, I invite you to meet me at the Grafton Street Pub in Harvard Square and play an endearingly mindless game called Splitting the Tab with Dan. Here's how it works. We flip a coin. I call heads, you call tails. And the loser pays the good barkeep, Paul, for our beers each time. Now, if we flip the coin 4 times and I won on 3 of them, you would undoubtedly chalk it up to bad luck on your part and challenge me to darts. Oh, thank you, Rob. Thank you for the pizza. Talking about putting his wife in a whoa. What? Jerry, what do your numbers means? Guys are so sweet. Barn. But if we flip the coin 4 million times, that's literally impossible. I mean, maybe if you're doing it by a computer, but uh, mm. And I won on 3 million of them, then you and your associates would probably send out for a large order of tar and feathers. Why? Because even if you don't know the first thing about probability theory, you have a very keen intuition that when numbers are small, little imperfections like a stray gust of wind or a dab of perspiration on the finger can influence the outcome of a coin flip. But when numbers are large, such imperfections stop mattering. There may have been a dollop of sweat on the coin on a few of these flips, and there may have been a wayward puff of air on a few others, and these imperfections might well account for the fact that the coin came up heads once more than expected when we flipped it 4 times. But what are the odds that these imperfections could have caused the coin to come up heads 1 million more times than expected? Infinitesimal. Your intuition tells you, and your intuition is spot on. The odds are as close to infinitesimal as things on Earth get without disappearing altogether. This same logic can be applied to the problem of subjective experience. Suppose we were to give a pair of volunteers a pair of experiences that were meant to induce happiness, say by giving $1 million to one of them and the gift of a small caliber revolver to the other. We then ask each volunteer to tell us how happy he or she is. The nouveau riche volunteer says she is ecstatic, and the armed volunteer says he's mildly pleased, though perhaps not quite as pleased as one ought to make an armed volunteer. It is possible that the two are actually having the same subjective emotional experiences, but describing them differently. Yes? The new millionaire may be demonstrating politeness rather than joy, or perhaps the new pistol owner is experiencing ecstasy, but because he recently shook the hand of God near the Great Barrier Reef, is describing his ecstasy as mere satisfaction. These problems are real problems, significant problems, and we would be foolish to conclude on the basis of these 2 reports that happiness is not, as it were, a warm gun. But if we gave away 1 million pistols and 1 million envelopes of money, and if 90% of the people who've got new money claim to be happier than 90% of the people who got new weapons, the odds that we're being deceived by the idiosyncrasies of verbal descriptions become very small indeed. Similarly, if a person tells us that she's happier with today's banana cream pie than with yesterday's coconut cream pie, we may rightfully worry that she is misremembering her prior experience. But if this were to happen over and over again with hundreds or thousands of people, some of whom tasted the coconut cream pie before the banana cream pie and some of whom tasted it after, we would have good reason to suspect that different pies really do give rise to different experiences, one of which is more pleasant than the other. After all, what are the odds that everyone misremembers banana cream pie is better than coconut cream pie, as worse than they really were? The fundamental problem in the science of experience is that if either the language squishing hypothesis or the experience stretching hypothesis is correct, then every one of us may have different mapping of what we experience onto what we say. And because subjective experiences can be shared only by saying, the true nature of those experiences can never be perfectly measured. In other words, if the experience and description scales are calibrated a bit differently for every person who uses them, then it is impossible for scientists to compare the claims of two people. That's a problem. But the problem isn't with the word compare, it's with the word two. Two is too small a number, and when it becomes 200 or 2,000, the different calibrations of different individuals begin to cancel one another out. If the workers at the factory that makes all the world's tape measures, rulers, and yardsticks get sloshed at a holiday party and started turning out millions of slightly different sized measuring instruments, we would not feel confident that a dinosaur was larger than a turnip if you measured one and I measured the other. After all, we may have used pickled rulers. But if hundreds of people with hundreds of rulers stepped up to one of these objects and took its measurements, we could average those measurements and feel reasonably confident that a Tyrannosaurus is indeed bigger than a root vegetable. After all, what are the odds that all the people who measured the dinosaur just so happen to have used stretched rulers, and that all the people who measured the turnip just so happen to have used squished rulers? Yes, it's possible, and the odds can be calculated quite precisely, but I will spare you the math and promise you that they are so slender that writing them down would endanger the world's supply of zeros. The bottom line is this: the attentive person's honest real time report is an imperfect approximation of her subjective experience, but it is the only game in town. When a fruit salad, a lover, or a jazz trio is just too imperfect for our taste, we stop eating, kissing, and listening. But the law of large numbers suggests that when a measurement is too imperfect for our taste, we should not stop measuring. Quite the opposite. We should measure again and again until nickel imperfections yield to the onslaught of data. Those subatomic particles that like to be everywhere at once seem to cancel out one another's behavior so that the large conglomeration of particles that we call cows, cars, and French Canadians stay exactly where we put them. By the same logic, the careful collection of a large number of experiential reports allows the imperfections of one to cancel out the imperfections of another. No individual's report may be taken as an unimpeachable and perfectly calibrated index of his experience, not yours, not mine, but we can be confident that if we ask enough people the same question, the average answer will be a roughly accurate index of the average experience. The science of happiness requires that we play the odds, and thus the information it provides us is always at some risk of being wrong. But if you want to bet against it, then flip a coin one more time, get out your wallet, and tell Paul to make mine a Guinness. Onward. I know he's wrong. It's like he's saying, oh, by a large amount of numbers. When the Torture Poets Department came out, so many people were like, this is too long, and this is too like personal, and too like all the complaints that they have the opposite for I'm sorry, that's a Taylor Swift album. Her new album, The Life of a Showgirl, where it's like, oh, this is like just like thrown together, and it's not as like it was too simple, and like all the opposite, by a large number of people. It's a large number of liars, people motivated to hate, people that are looking to not like. So, like, just because it's a large number doesn't mean that they're right or telling the truth or analyzing their own feelings properly. One of the most annoying songs in the often annoying history of popular music begins with this line: feelings, nothing more than feelings. I wince when I hear it because it always strikes me as roughly equivalent to starting a hymn with Jesus, nothing more than Jesus, nothing more than feelings. What could be more important than feelings? Sure, war and peace may come to mind, but our war. Sorry, I get thirsty when I read, and I'm almost out of this, but I want to finish up this chapter. I'm almost done. But are war and peace important for any reason other than the feelings they produce? If war didn't cause pain and anguish, if peace didn't provide for delights both transcendental and carnal, would either of them matter to us at all? War, peace, art, money, marriage, birth, death, disease, religion. These are just a few of the really big topics over which oceans of blood and ink have been spilled, but they are really big topics for one reason alone. Each is a powerful source of human emotion. If they didn't make us feel uplifted, desperate, thankful, and hopeless, we would keep all that ink and blood to ourselves. As Plato asked, are these things good for any other reason except that they end in pleasure and get rid of and avert pain? Are you looking to any other standard but pleasure and pain when you call them good? Indeed, feelings don't just matter, they are what mattering means. We would expect any creature that feels pain when burned and pleasure when fed to call burning and eating bad and good, respectively, just as we would expect an asbestos creature with no digestive tract to find such designations arbitrary. Moral philosophers have tried for centuries to find some other way to define good and bad, but none has ever convinced the rest or me. We cannot say that something is good unless we can say what is good for. And if we examine all the many objects and experiences that our species calls good and ask what they are good for, the answer is clear. By and large, they are good for making us feel happy. Given the importance of feelings, it would be nice to be able to say precisely what they are and how one might measure them. As we have seen, we can't do that with the kind of precision that scientists covet. Nonetheless, if the methodological and conceptual tools that science has developed do not allow us to measure the feelings of a single individual with pinpoint accuracy. They at least allow us to go stumbling in the dark with pickled rulers to measure dozens of individuals again and again. The problem facing us is a difficult one, but it is too important to ignore. Why do we so often fail to know what will make us happy in the future? Science offers some intriguing answers to this question, and now that we have a sense of the problem and a general method for solving it, we are ready to inspect them. Part 3 is called Realism, begins with a quote: "The belief that things are in reality as they appear to be in the mind." And we will begin chapter 4 tomorrow. If she's not here and here late and all that, I'm not expecting her to be, but in the blind spot of the mind's eye. That sounds very intriguing. Mm. So, if things are good that make you happy, I would ask you if I'm good, but I'm sure sometimes it makes you quite sad. My own sadness. And you know what's making me sad? Look at my bangs. What is this? What is this? Well, you know what? This was the late shower. Then I put a hat on because I'm cold. I will need to get my bangs cut at some point. If I can ever find those scissors that she used to clean the sink with. Because they used to be my bang cutting scissors. I would say hair cutting scissors, but I don't cut my hair all that often. All right, my loves. I hope to see you tomorrow. I did tell you I'd keep you posted today, and I have. On the other site. So you know what's been going on. I love you very much. Get some sleep. Stay warm. Try and stay warm. Look at this. Look what she's got. Her reindeer. She's like, I got the. I want to play with this. Mm, I love you.